How exactly do we train thousands of clients who may be already deployed to start using IPsec as their primary protocol or to start using trusted network detection? The answer to that is in this video. Let's begin. One of the challenges that we've had for a long time is how do we take distributed devices like remote users like Bob and Lois and Susan, and they're all connected to the internet. And at corporate headquarters, we have our ASA acting as our head-end VPN device. It's also connected to the internet. If we want to change our minds, for example, about how we're going to go ahead and build the VPNs, for example, by default, we have SSL as the primary protocol being used by the AnyConnect client. However, it also supports IKE v2. So if we want to change it to IKE v2 and use IPsec, instead of SSL, we need to go ahead and tell all the AnyConnect clients that they should be using as their primary protocol IPsec instead of using SSL. Now, the solution to training all those clients on how to do that is by creating an AnyConnect profile. And this profile is an XML document. And in that XML document, it's got something called the primary protocol, and I'm just abbreviating here. And if we set it to IPsec as part of the profile, and we associate that profile with a group policy, and that group policy is associated with the connection profile, then when Susan and Lois and Bob all connect in, we can automatically push that updated AnyConnect profile down to those systems. So Susan's, Lois's, and Bob's computer will all say, hey, okay, next time I get it. I'm going to go ahead and use IPsec as my primary protocol instead of the traditional default SSL. Another really good reason to run a virtual private network isn't just to get to corporate resources on the corporate network. Another great reason is to help protect against being on somebody else's Wi-Fi. For example, let's say Susan is at Starbucks or McDonald's and she's on the free Wi-Fi. Is that really the free Wi-Fi from the company, or is somebody doing an evil twin or a man-in-the-middle attack or something else malicious? How do we really know? So another benefit of the VPN is that if Susan does connect through a potentially hostile Wi-Fi network, if she builds the VPN all the way to corporate headquarters and then they route her traffic back out to wherever it's finally going, like CNN.com or wherever it is she wants to go, that VPN is now protecting this leg of her journey as well through the unprotected or untrusted Wi-Fi space. Now the trick is, how do we get Susan to remember to go ahead and launch her VPN whenever she's on a potentially hostile or untrusted network? And one of the techniques we can use is go ahead and modify the AnyConnect profile. We could also define specific domains. For example, if we knew that if Susan's computer was on this domain, the domain would be cbtnuggets.com. And maybe the DNS would be dns1.cbtnuggets.com. And in the profile, we could specify that if your computer is part of cbtnuggets.com and you're using this specific DNS server, we could also have a list. You can have multiple domains and multiple DNS servers. And if those match up, where Susan's computer really is using both those, the AnyConnect client could say, I must be on a trusted network. And that's what Trusted Network Detection, or TND, is all about. So that way, when Susan takes her laptop and she goes over to Starbucks or McDonald's or what have you, she will not be, at that point, part of cbtnuggets.com or using the specific DNS server. And at that point, when the AnyConnect client goes and checks and say, hey, okay, what domain am I on? And if the domain doesn't match or the DNS server doesn't match, the AnyConnect client is going to consider itself to be on an untrusted network. And at that point, based on the instructions that we have in the profile that we've previously pushed to her machine, her AnyConnect client can now say, okay, I'm on an untrusted network. I'm supposed to go ahead and automatically build the VPN tunnel to corporate headquarters. And again, the beauty about this AnyConnect profile is that we can configure it right on the ASA. And then as clients connect, it can automatically be pushed down to those clients, at which point that new information will be part of the AnyConnect configuration on those computers. So on this client that'll act as our host on the outside interface of the ASA, let's go ahead and look at our server list. We only have one server, which is ASA1. So we'll click on Connect. We'll put in the password associated with the user admin. And it's now establishing the VPN. Now what's happening also is checking for any updated AnyConnect profiles. And if it finds one, it can download that and have that as part of the new configuration for the AnyConnect client on this PC. So now that our connection's in place, and we have some bytes sent and received, also we can verify we can reach a resource that's sitting on the inside network of the ASA. So if we do an IP config here, there's the IP address that I have on the natural interface, the physical interface of this device in my lab. And here's the IP address that I've been assigned by the ASA of 10.1.0.201. So that 10.1.0 network is the inside interface network on the ASA. So if we send some traffic to a resource on that inside network, for example, ping to 10.1.0.11, that happens to be a resource that I know exists on that inside network, and we send those pings, you'll notice that our counts are also going up as far as bytes sent and received. If we bring up the console of the ASA and do a show VPN-session DB AnyConnect, it will show us the details regarding that current AnyConnect session. And it has the details regarding who we logged on as, the IP address that we've been assigned, our original IP address that we came in from, what's being used for encryption and hashing, our group policy, our tunnel group, and other details regarding our current AnyConnect SSL session. To look at that same information inside of ASDM, we'd go to Monitoring, and then in Monitoring, we'd go down to VPN if it wasn't already selected. And from the drop-down, we could say I want to see AnyConnect client information, and then click on Details for the additional details regarding that AnyConnect session. So now that we've seen and verified that we have a functioning, working AnyConnect client using SSL, let's go ahead and modify a profile that we can push down to that client to change its behavior. To do that, we're going to go to Configuration, and we're going to go to Remote Access VPN. And under the Network Client Access section, we're going to expand that, and we're going to select AnyConnect Client Profile. And I currently have a profile here. But if we didn't have a current profile, we could click on Add and simply create a new profile. Let's edit the existing profile that's currently in place. Let's begin by modifying this AnyConnect profile by changing the server list. At the moment, it's got ASA1. If we wanted to add another server, we click on Add the new server information in. For example, we could call this ASA2 and click on OK. And once this is all saved as part of the profile and the client connects and downloads this profile, it'll then have two servers in its list of what it can connect to, ASA1 and ASA2. Now, while we're right here too, let's edit ASA1. So I'll select ASA1 and click on Edit. And you'll notice for ASA1 that the primary protocol is SSL by default, and that is the default behavior for an AnyConnect client. And if we haven't pushed down a custom AnyConnect profile to the clients, that's the default protocol the AnyConnect client is going to use anyway. So regarding the entry for connecting to ASA1, if we want to modify the primary protocol from the drop-down, we'll select IPsec. We'll click on OK. I'll click on OK again, and we'll apply that. And what it's telling us is that that profile, that XML file, is going to be stored on flash. And when customers connect, if they connect on a tunnel group that's associated with the group policy that contains this AnyConnect profile, that AnyConnect profile is going to be pushed down to their workstation. If we wanted to see this profile, we could do a couple things. We could click on Edit and view it through the nice profile editor built into ASDM. We could export it to our local computer and open it up, or we could simply take a look at the contents of that file as they sit on the flash of the ASA. So on the ASA, if we do a dir, there's our file right there. If we type in more and type or paste in that file name, we can see the literal contents of that file. So you'll notice right here on the server list, we have an entry called ASA1, and you'll notice that it also specified that the primary protocol is IPsec. So once this is pushed down to the clients, the next time they connect, if they connect to ASA1, they're going to try to use IPsec instead of SSL. Now, before we go to the client and disconnect and reconnect so we can get that policy, there's a couple other really important items I want to share with you about making this work. Number one, having the AnyConnect client profile is great, but we'd also want to make sure it's associated with a group policy. And to take a look at that, we'll go to Group Policy. And then the group policy that I'm currently using for AnyConnect is called Group Policy Com Profile Test 1. If we look at the details of that group policy by clicking on Edit, and then under Advanced, if we expand that and go to the AnyConnect client and select that, the client profiles to download, that's where it's going to be specified. So we'd want to make sure that we not only create the AnyConnect client profile, but we also associate it with the group policy so that people who are using that group policy can download it. Because that's currently associated, I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone. There is one other thing that's really important for this all to work, and that is something called client services that also needs to be enabled. If we go back up to the AnyConnect connection profiles, this option right here needs to be checked called Enable Client Services. That allows the actual pushing down of the AnyConnect profile to the clients. So as far as troubleshooting goes, if it wasn't working, we'd want to make sure that client services is enabled. We'd want to make sure that the AnyConnect profile was created and associated with our group policy and that our customer was using that group policy. Now, because those elements are in place, let's go back to our client And on our client, we're going to go ahead and disconnect. So I'll click on disconnect. We'll go ahead and click on connect again. I'll log in. And right there, it's checking for profile updates. And because we do have an update, it's actually downloading and incorporating the new profile. So now we have our connection. If we verify our reachability once more, let's hit the up arrow key. We'll do a ping again. Now what's not happening yet is we're still not connecting via IPsec yet. And that's because we just connected, we just got the new profile, but the next time we connect and future times that we connect to ASA1, now that we have that profile, we'll be using IPsec. And to demonstrate that, let's disconnect one more time. We'll click on connect, we'll put in our password, we'll do an IP config, just to verify that we have our virtual address that's been assigned to us. Let's also do a ping, just to verify we have reachability. If we go back to the ASA console, and do a show VPN-session DB again for AnyConnect clients, you'll notice that now we're connected. We're using IKE v2. Here's our encryption. Here's our hashing. We're assigned the same IP address we had before. We're still logged on as admin. There's our group policy. There's our tunnel group. And because this group policy right here that we're currently using is associated with that AnyConnect profile that we modified, that's the reason that that client downloaded that profile when it connected via AnyConnect. If we wanted to view that connection information inside of ASDM, we go to ASDM and select Monitoring. We go to the VPN section. We select the AnyConnect client. And for the details, we can click on the Details link to see the detailed information regarding the IKE v2 tunnel and the child SAs that it's created for IPsec. The other thing I'd like to show you right now is how to implement trusted network detection as part of the AnyConnect profile. So we'll go back to the AnyConnect profile. I'll simply edit the one that we currently have here. And in this AnyConnect profile, we're going to go to the Preferences Part 2 page. And if we enable the automatic VPN policy, we can go ahead and put in our trusted domains. For example, *cbtnuggets.com. And the trusted DNS servers like dns1.cbtnuggets.com, etc. And if this is part of our profile and we push it down to the AnyConnect clients, so it's now part of their AnyConnect configuration on the computers of Bob and Lois and Susan, when that computer looks and says, okay, what domain am I part of right now? If it's not CBT Nuggets and we're not using the DNS server or servers, we can have this comma separated as well. If these are both listed, the trusted domains and the trusted DNS servers, and the client does not match on the domains or the servers, the client's going to consider itself to be at that moment on an untrusted network, and it's going to take action using the untrusted network policy. And the default is to go ahead and build or connect using the VPN. There's also the flip side of that, and that is if we currently are on cbtnuggets.com and we're using one of the DNS servers that are listed, and again, there could be multiple domains and multiple DNS servers, we could have this comma separated. But if we match on both those areas, then we would be considered to be on a trusted network, and the policy would be disconnect, meaning, hey, you're on a trusted network, let's go ahead and disconnect the VPN. You don't need it, you're on trusted ground. If we wanted to modify the behaviors for either of those, we could specify, for example, do nothing, which says that, hey, if you have a VPN currently up and you're on a trusted network, it's not going to go ahead and disconnect it. That's what do nothing means. It means don't change anything that currently was in place. And for the untrusted network policy, we have the options of connect or do nothing. So a do nothing policy for trusted and a do nothing policy for untrusted is about equivalent to not even having the automatic VPN policy at all. It's very likely that if you find yourself on an untrusted network, you want to connect. And if the client finds itself on a trusted network, in the profile we can specify to go ahead and disconnect or do nothing or pause or connect. And it's very likely we're going to say do nothing. If they're already on a trusted network and they have a VPN tunnel that's up, we may just want to leave that tunnel up. That may cause less disruption to the user who currently has a VPN tunnel in place and is doing work over that tunnel. But this, as part of our policy, is how we would implement the trusted network detection. I have had a great time in this video. I'm so glad you joined me for it. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.